Welcome to today's webinar, Managing Finances When You're Young and Unable to Work. Your presenter today is Nicola Beswick and I'm your facilitator, Nicola Graham. So we like to start our programs with an acknowledgement. So we acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians past and present and emerging on whose lands we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and the relationship of Aboriginal people to country and respect the cultural authority of the elders in each community. So our presenter today is Nicola Beswick. She is a certified financial planner at GFM Wealth Advisory. And Nicola worked for around 9 years, I think, as a patent attorney in a law firm. And she left that career to become a financial planner. She, in part, decided to pursue that career, appreciating the true value of receiving financial planning advice after her father was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I believe Nicola's currently doing her master's in financial planning as well as being a certified financial planner. So just a note there regarding informed choice. And that's great, we can see your screen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nicola, and welcome everyone to today's webinar talking about how to manage your finances when you're younger and unable to work, particularly due to a diagnosis with multiple sclerosis. Today, I'm here to present on behalf of the Pro Bono Financial Advice Network. We are an organisation of people within the financial planning industry, as well as a number of financial advisors. And our key mission, as I've outlined in the slide here, is to help connect financial advisors who want to provide pro bono advice to Australians who are undergoing a financial hardship, specifically through a health crisis. I know that there's a lot going on there, and we know that helping people in need is particularly important through anything in life. And that is one of the aims of the organisation, the Pro Bono Financial Advice Network, or PFAN, we call it. As Nicola indicated, this is me, and I am a financial planner. I've worked in the industry for, gosh, close to 7 years now, and I've got a range of qualifications from a specific industry perspective. But the true reason I have to put my disclosure up to say essentially this information within the webinar today is general nature. So if you do see something today that gets your attention and thinks that that's relevant to you, please contact us through the Pro Bono Advice Network. Please don't rely on this information through the webinar. But getting back to my qualifications, I know the reason I do what I do and love what I do is because of this gentleman here in this photo. This is my beautiful dad, and he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in his mid-50s, and that's really spurred me into seeing the really great value that financial planners bring to the table for anyone, and particularly with Dad. He was able to stop work and carry on living his life as he is now, which is fantastic, and that's what's led me on this journey today. So today I'm here to talk about how financial planners can help you navigate the complex world of essentially finance, and there's many things that we do as financial planners, and that very much depends on someone's stage of life. Everyone has very different needs and so forth, and today we're focusing on when that life cycle gets disrupted and picking out a scenario with this gentleman, Mike, who was a young guy, and really exploring how Mike's financial planner helped him get through his current situation so he could live the best life he was trying to get. So just to recap a number of things that financial planning does is we look at someone's specific financial situation, where they are now, and what they're wanting to achieve in the future. Everyone's goals, everyone's situation is so different, and generally financial planners bring together a whole range of different things, whether it's investment advice, accumulation, cash flow management, or managing tax and so forth. There's a whole raft of different things that financial planners are there to assist people on, and what's important to someone may not necessarily be important to others. But there are some things that financial planners can't do, particularly estate planning documents. That's where you need a legal professional, preferably qualified in those areas, to get some robust estate planning documents in place, as well as financial counsellors. Financial counsellors are particularly important. They assist people with navigating any issues around debt management and so forth, and they all work in conjunction with each other, and it's great to have those type of people on your side. Now, generally with financial planning, what we try and do is we want to look at someone's life stage, and everybody's life stage is different, but this is the typical approach that we see. People in their early 20s up to 40s, we're trying to accumulate wealth. And then as we're getting closer to retirement, it's about preserving and maximising that wealth. So when you can and do retire, you've got some funds behind you in order to live that life. So this is everything goes smoothly and there aren't any hiccups. But we know life isn't necessarily smooth. I know we're all living through the COVID situation right now, and like many of us, life has taken an unexpected turn from that situation. But what happens with a crisis from a health perspective? And that's what we're really here to try and explore today. Throughout these webinars, and we've done a couple of them now, we've really focused on some situations that have come directly through MS Connect. We've got a couple of people, we've got these people that are in different stages of their life who have all been impacted through their diagnosis with MS at some point, and it's understanding what we can do for them to help them get through, particularly from a financial side of things. And so the webinars are really focused on real life situations that have come to us from MS Connect. These are people that have rung up and said, hey, this is happening to me, and how do I navigate through all of these things that I have to do? So we've talked about Debbie, we've talked about Mary, and today we're going to focus on Mike. Mike, he's single, he rents, he particularly struggles to get work, and this is really due to the progressiveness of his MS and how that is impacting his ability to really do the things that we take for granted every day. When Mike came to us, his financial planners, he said to us, I just get job seeker and rent assist from the government. My key thing at the moment is trying to find a safe and affordable place to live. He knows that he's going to need help from others at some stage, and this is really his big concern around what he can do and how his life looks going forward. So that's Mike and what he said. But the key details with what we look at with understanding who he is really articulated in these points here. Young guy, 27, lives in a share house, so moved out of home, and he's trying to do everything that we want to do at that age and be independent. He doesn't work because of his essentially the progressiveness of his MS, and he's found that his only income now is relying on that government support, so the job seeker and the rent assist. When we drill down into Mike's situation, we see that Mike has a number of superannuation accounts, and so that's particularly important to look at in terms of what that means for him. But also importantly, he's been very diligent, and he doesn't have any debt or liabilities, so that has some good assistance for him moving forward. So the key things when Mike's advisor sat down and had a look at what Mike had said to him around wanting to get some support and certainty around his living situation, and looking at the financial aspect of Mike's situation around the superannuation and the income, the key things that Mike's advisor looked at in order to see what he could do to assist him was particularly around making sure that his cash flow or his income was maximised, looking at those multiple superannuation accounts and seeing if there was any risk or personal insurances attached within that. And there are the other considerations that we all look at as well, which is something that's really important for us to address. So the first thing we want to look at is Mike's current income or his cash flow. We know that what we get as income is the most important thing, because that assists us to live our day-to-day lives and then have choices over that. We know that Mike, he said he's got the rent assist and job seeker, and he had the maximum payments from each of those payments. That left him with just over $18,000 a year. And when we take into consideration the basic expenses of rent and food and clothing, his rent at $300 a week, that really ate into what he was getting from an income perspective. And you can see he doesn't have a lot left over to be able to meet the other day-to-day side of things. And you can really see why he was so concerned or apprehensive around how things may look for him from a future perspective. So a couple of things with just reconfirming the rent assist and the job keeper. The rent is attached to an amount depending on the amount of rent that you pay, and there are specific thresholds there. The job seeker is particularly that support if you're trying to find work and age between 22 and age pension age. And there are things around making sure that you're within the income rules for that payment, as well as the residency payments. So that we know was one key thing, but what could we do to increase Mike's income? The number one thing that Mike's advisor looked at was Mike able to access other support payments? We know that he has pretty much no savings, and that his income was from the job seeker and rent assist. So he was only getting those basic payments. He had some superannuation, and for Centrelink purposes, superannuation, when it is held within that accumulation phase, is not assessed for Centrelink support. So looking at this as an entitlement or eligibility perspective, we looked at both the disability support pension to see what he could potentially get under that. Now, the disability support pension, which is a payment because you're unable to work due to medical reasons and you meet that required thresholds, is also based on an income and an assets test. Now, we can see, depending on your situation, the full amount of pension under this is tapered, and it also depends on your status, whether you're single or a part of a couple. And for Mike's situation, the key thing is looking at those entitlements for under the income for the disability support pension. So with Mike's income, we know that it's only government support, so we know he's under the thresholds there for that full pension. So that's a tick in that box there. The next test is looking at that assets test though, making sure that the assets that he holds are below or within the benchmarks for getting full or part pension. We know based on the situation with Mike, the only asset that he has is essentially the superannuation that he's accumulated through his work previously. And we'd see later on, just to make sure that he's under that threshold there from an asset test perspective. We also know he's not a homeowner, so that's particularly important when we're looking at this criteria for him. The key reason for looking at this was really the difference of income that he can get between the disability support pension and what he was getting from the job seeker. You can see there, qualifying for that full disability support pension, Mike would be able to get an extra amount per fortnight compared to that job seeker payment. And being able to have that, potentially you can see changes his income over a year by another $10,000. So fortunately for Mike, he qualified for that full disability support pension, and that was particularly because he met the requirements from the medical perspective, but then also his income and his assets were well below those thresholds that were previously discussed. And you really can see that the difference of him being able to get that full disability support pension over a year, and coupled with that rent assist, it really does change the level of income that he has to fund his expenses. He's gone from having previously two and a half, just over, in extra income to meet his basic needs of food, clothing, all those things that we think of, and to have an extra $10,000 to meet his expenses is really a huge plus in his situation. So to increase his income was particularly great for his situation. But it doesn't end there. Mike's financial advisor really drilled down into those superannuation accounts that Mike had. Turns out, like any good young person, they've picked up multiple superannuation accounts through jobs and having for their employer to have put money into superannuation as part of their employment. And it turns out that Mike was one of these people who had multiple superannuation accounts, and he had a range of them. We had a few from his working days in hospitality through Host Plus, one in the MRC, but the one where his income was going into prior to his ceasing his employment was UniSuper. And this was particularly interesting because what we could see here is Mike had superannuation, a combined balance of over $100,000, but he also, within those superannuation accounts, had insurances, so life, total and permanent disability, as well as income protection policy. Now, this is particularly of importance for Mike, particularly because insurances are that one of those things there we love to hate, and they're only good when we need them, which in this situation Mike does. So looking through the superannuation and the insurances that Mike had, we can see that he has different superannuation accounts, and he also has those life insurances in place through each of them. Combined, his life insurance is to $230,000, and we all know that life insurance gets paid out as that lump sum when you pass away, and or if you meet the conditions from a terminal illness perspective. Now, unfortunately, Mike's situation meant that he didn't meet any of that criteria, and so that was something that we had to go, we know you've got that life insurance, but we can't access that. One of the key issues here as well is around Mike having multiple superannuation accounts, and we have to be mindful of that, because particularly we need to, insurance is important for someone in this situation, and we want to make sure that we preserve that insurance. And so ensuring that we have the understanding of the conditions around keeping that insurance and those accounts active was particularly important, because we don't want to inadvertently lose insurance that we've paid premiums for throughout our time. But the other interesting insurance point that Mike had was the total and permanent disability. Now, total and permanent disability is when someone suffers an illness or injury and they become incapacitated and are unable to work. And those definitions do vary depending on the policies within the accounts. But you can see here that in conjunction with Mike's life policy, he also had $230,000 worth of TPD. And so this is particularly good if he meets those definitions to be able to claim on that policy. Again, we had to be very careful because Mike has those multiple accounts, and we want to ensure that those accumulated TPD policies have been maintained and are not going to lapse due to change in conditions within the account provider. So ensuring that Mike had that set out and he was able to retain at least those insurances accumulated was particularly important as well, coupled with that life insurance side of things. The other really important thing that Mike's advisor found was that through his working days and premiums or payments going into uni super from his employer, this had ensured that an income protection policy for some amount had been kept active. Now, income protection is really important if you are unable to work due to illness or injury, and that can pay you up to 75% of your income after a set waiting period for a period of time, and that's called the full benefit period. With Mike, his income protection policy was in place for $3,000 per month for a 5-year period. So that is actually quite beneficial to him. We've seen his income before, and having just that small increase from the full disability support pension dramatically changed his income. So getting that income protection payout for Mike through his insurance was really, really quite important to get through, and would help him for the next 5 years. So with Mike being able to meet the criteria with claiming on that income protection and having that extra $3,000 per month come through, his impact to his situation was quite remarkable. He went from having the full disability support pension and the rent assist to now having only a part disability support pension payout, because the income protection that he was getting from his superannuation account, it's reduced the amount of income through that income test that we talked about earlier. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because what we can see here is Mike's income has increased dramatically to just over $48,000 a year. So we've all of a sudden gone up and increased his income again with the ability to claim on that income protection policy. Now, we do know that Mike has those expenses. He has the rent that he has to pay. And interestingly enough, the amount of income he was now getting through the disability support pension and the income protection put him in a position where he had to pay a little bit of income tax, where before his taxable position from a personal tax liability was essentially negligible. He didn't earn enough to warrant to have to pay a large amount of tax to then have that flow into his ongoing expenses. But again, we've further increased his income to enable him to have more money to be able to spend on his essential needs, food, clothing, and ensuring that he can get the things that we all necessarily take for granted sometimes in our lives. So going through those specific steps of maximising Mike's income through assessing his eligibility through the disability support pension, and then investigating what he could potentially get through any superannuation and income support, was particularly beneficial and had this really great impact to Mike's situation for the next 5 years, because that income protection policy paid him for a 5-year period. Not only did the insurance claim situation stop there, but Mike was able to access that lump sum or from the TPD payment. And we can see here that he had $230,000 worth of insurance through TPD through these multiple superannuation accounts. And that could make a huge difference to Mike's situation as well. But there's some interesting details, and this is really where we need to make sure that the situation for Mike has been explored fully. If Mike went through the situation of claiming on that TPD policy and getting that lump sum into his personal name, that could have some really detrimental impacts to Mike's position. So the things that Mike's advisor took into consideration with outlining recommendations to him as to how to look at that TPD lump sum payout is looking at things like the income to that disability support pension payment. By taking out money from superannuation and having that into his personal name, that further adds to that assessable income for Mike, and therefore further decreases his ability to get the support from the government, particularly through that 5-year period. Now, we know that Mike's income protection works for is there for another 5 years, so we need to look at his overall wealth position. Do we look at holding that payment from the TPD claim within superannuation to then have the access at the end of that 5 years, or if and when he needs it? So that's a particularly important consideration for this position that Mike was in, as well as just making sure that Mike's income tax position, so that personal income tax that he would be liable, wasn't going to be detrimentally impacted as well. So these are 3 really key important things for when we look at planning income with insurance payouts. In the end, the advice to Mike was to have that TPD lump sum paid out within the superannuation environment, but not necessarily take it out of superannuation just this stage. So what Mike's advisor ended up doing was assisting Mike with claiming on that TPD payment within superannuation across those multiple accounts, and retaining that TPD payment within superannuation. So essentially quarantining it in the superannuation environment, knowing that they could access that when he needed it, particularly at the end of that 5-year period when Mike's income protection payout was going to stop. Now, what that did was it also meant that there was a potential for that wealth within superannuation from that TPD payment to grow a little bit, and therefore give Mike a little bit extra more income when he needed it from those payments at that time. So these are the real devils in the detail when it comes to ensuring that you have a plan with accessing your insurance. And while on the face value getting a lump sum could be quite beneficial, it does have flow-on effects to your situation, and everyone is different. And we know with Mike is the cash that he was getting from those income support was key, and any savings that he had through that regular income that he was getting was held in cash. I know cash isn't necessarily attractive right now from an interest rate perspective, but it is the one thing that we know is going to be there, particularly when we need to have a call on it. So making sure that any savings that Mike had was retained as cash for future needs. The other considerations that we had for Mike was making sure that his estate planning details were in order. Now, I know no one likes talking about estate planning and what that means for them, but ensuring that you have someone that you trust being able to make decisions for you when the time comes from an incapacity perspective, or having control around the money, no matter what it is important. And so it's particularly key that Mike went and sought out advice around having his will, having a power of attorney, so guardianship where someone can make lifestyle and medical decisions, but also financial decisions as well, because you want to ensure that someone's there helping you make the best decisions for you. So Mike, although being a young guy at the age of 27, went off and made sure that his wills and power of attorneys were put in place. Now, the key thing with this is, if anything ever changes, just making sure that wills and power of attorneys reflect wishes on an ongoing basis. So the key thing that I wanted to show you today was just a snippet of Mike and how a financial planner helped him. The financial planner helped him increase his cash flow or income through accessing not only the disability support pension, where he was previously getting the job seeker payments, but also getting that ability to have an income come through the income protection policy that he held within his superannuation. The financial planner also helped him with assessing his other insurance aspects. Now, when we look at TPT payments and being able to have that sit there in the background and know that that money's there to fall on when the time comes, was particularly important and helps with that certainty. But we know that everyone is different, and Mike, although that was his situation, everyone goes through different situations with what they can claim, what the impacts are, and it's really important to seek advice through a trusted source, whether it's through your own advisor or contacting us here at the Pro Bono Advice Network, where we can put you in connection with someone that has put their hand up to say, yes, I'm willing to help and part on a little bit of my knowledge that's important for you specifically. Now, next webinar, we're going to actually talk about someone very different. And again, one of those beautiful people that we have the privilege of talking through and getting us to see their needs. We are going to explore the advice in detail and some of the key things that an advisor could do for them. But there are a few helpful hints before I go, and these are particularly important for everyone on this call, regardless of your situation. Understand what your plans are, long and short term. Work out a budget. Do you know what's coming in? Do you know what's going out? And make sure that you're getting the support that you are able to access. Work out any savings that you have and how long that may last, and particularly plan for your future. When and if you need to have access to superannuation, or what are your insurance policies and can you claim on them? And most importantly, get a team. We're all here helping you, whether it's through the Pro Bono Advice Network, whether it's through MS Connect or MS Limited or any of those organisations that there. It's really important to have the key people that you can go to and ask for some support. If you want to contact us at the Pro Bono Advice Network, you can go to our website and there's the link there. You can also send us an email and we can have some contact and pass you on to the right people that are within our network as well. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar and got a little bit of a taste of what we can do as advisors, and please reach out. There's very many people out there that are willing to help us, particularly in a time of need.
Nicola, thank you so much. I've just got a couple of questions, but lots of really great information there. Really appreciated. Neil asked early on in the webinar, typically, how do you keep accounts active to ensure the TPD stays available?
So one of the two key things that I suggest you do is each superannuation provider has a minimum balance that they like having within their accounts. So, for example, and I am going to make this up, so please don't rely on these numbers, but if you had a Host Plus for account, for example, they might have a minimum balance of $5,000 or $6,000 to have within that account. And generally, we're finding now that superannuation providers like seeing a contribution go into an account. Now that contribution and the amount that you put in it does vary as well. So you may find that you have to put a small amount just to keep those superannuation accounts active. Particularly, the key thing is if you do have multiple accounts and you've found that you have been diagnosed with MS, that insurance is gold and you want to keep it active. So really drilling down and calling up your provider to ask what their conditions are is particularly important. Providers do also have to let you know if account balances are getting low, so just keep an eye on that, any mail that's coming through as well. So
Thanks, Nicola.
You're welcome.
Yeah, a couple more questions. Melissa has indicated that she had a payout, an income protection payout, and she wished she'd known some of this information. She would have put it into super instead of getting that big tax bill. So Melissa's going to contact you and she'd love to know if you've got an email.
Yes. So my my email is nicola@gfmwealth.com.au, or you can send an email through the Pro Bono email address that was up. I'll put it back on the stream, and that will find its way to me as well.
Beautiful. So if you email to the Pro Bono address and just put it attention Nicola Beswick, then it will reach you.
Yes.
That's great. And Bridie has said, can you apply for IP after an MS diagnosis?
If it will depend on the type of policy. If you apply for an income protection policy, what you would find is generally insurers will put a restriction in place that will exclude specific illnesses or diagnoses. So you may find that you can apply and get an income protection policy in place. However, you might also have an exclusion from any conditions relating to MS. That's not necessarily to say don't apply. It's also worthwhile going through and assessing your options. There's so many other things that could happen to us throughout life, which would be able to you to claim on that policy. So I hope that answers the question. But certainly talk to someone who can help and get that advice to you around your specific situation.
Thanks, Nicola. And finally, Sue asked, does this case show that there is a benefit to having multiple super funds and not necessarily merging them all into one?
It does. Now, it's always simpler to have one, but the key thing is it's making sure that you're not inadvertently losing something that you could necessarily have received. So, for example, if we look at Mike's situation, and Mike had consolidated all of that super into one, he would have lost that insurances that were sitting with those two accounts that were technically ones that he wasn't contributing into. So assessing your options and understanding what the impacts are from the decisions that you're making, particularly around that insurance piece, is really, really important, because you don't want to lose something that you have been paying for, because you have paid for those insurance premiums through your superannuation accounts already.
Great, thank you, Nicola. And that's all the questions that we've had today. So I might take the screen back and just finish off with our housekeeping. But thank you, so much information, and so great for people listening to know that they can get that pro bono financial advice, which is so beneficial for people. So
Yes.
Thanks, Nicola. Thanks for your time today. And I'm just going to finish off with some housekeeping information for everybody. Just a reminder that the gateway to all of our services at MSL is through MS Connect on 1800 042 138 or through the email. Lots of good reasons to call MS Connect. You can speak to an MS expert around symptom management and up-to-date information. You can speak to our nurse advisors. You can speak to our social workers. It's a referral point for our employment support services and for our peer support, etc. And we do provide peer support, which we're finding people are really drawing on at the moment, especially during COVID. So we provide one-to-one phone support, face-to-face groups, telegroups, Facebook groups, etc. So if you call MS Connect, we can find what would be most appropriate for you. We have got a symptom management tool that you can access through our website. We do provide employment support services for those of you that may be in employment or searching for employment. We can help you to stay in employment, and we can help you find new employment. And that's a national service. And again, access through MS Connect. We are also a registered NDIS provider, providing different services in different locations. We've also just recently launched a range of podcasts for you that you can access through your podcast provider, such as Spotify or through Google, iTunes, etc. And you can also access it through our website, and a range of different topics from experts, which are really fantastic to listen to. So thank you again for attending today, and a big thank you to Nicola. And please stay on and complete the survey, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Nicola.